So here's a personal story for you. I booked a trip for my family last Christmas on Southwest Airlines. As a result of the pandemic, we had to cancel. Southwest Airlines was graciously agreed to canceling it and said that they would allow me to use the funds from that cancellation on a future trip. Good news, right? So this year, I tried to book the exact same trip at the exact same time for Christmas for the same people, and guess what happened? Southwest Airlines wouldn't allow me to use the money. Well, that would be kind of a sad story and not really something appropriate for this channel, except for the fact that this is the airline that received billions from the taxpayers, myself included, and you, by the way. And as a result of that, we're able to post a profit, which were it not for the bailouts, they would have lost more than $1 billion. Let's talk about that in today's video. I'm Mike Greiner. I'm a lifelong Democratic activist who's concerned about the direction our country is taking. I'm also someone who occasionally flies airlines, as most people in the United States do. Well, the airlines received pretty substantial bailouts as a result of the COVID crisis last year. Most people were in favor of it as a result of the fact that we supposedly saved all these jobs and kept the airlines flying despite the fact that there was this tremendous drop in traffic as a result of the pandemic. In response, the airlines did make some guarantees, for example, that they wouldn't pay outlandish salaries to their executives and they wouldn't engage in stock buybacks while the pandemic was ongoing. They also agreed to continue serving certain destinations that they would have dropped otherwise because they were relatively unprofitable. But as soon as the airlines started making money again, all those promises were forgotten. Airlines have already started rewarding their executives with hefty pay packages and giving stockholders something to cheer about. The employees and the traveling public, not so much. The employees have not received huge raises, and the traveling public, well, we're still being squeezed for every dollar we can be under the airline's ridiculous rules. Even Southwest Airlines, which is known by some as being better than most, with their lower baggage fees, etc., won't let me use the funds that I used to book a flight last year at the height of the pandemic to book the exact same flight this year with my family. Somehow it just doesn't seem fair, does it? Well, in fact, it's not fair. And what it is an example of corporate welfare that we have going on in this country. We don't have capitalism in this country. What we have is a system of plutocrats and oligarchy. The joke is that the very wealthy like socialism for themselves, but capitalism for everyone else. And that's not far off. During the financial crisis of 2008, they were more than happy to see people kicked out of their homes. But the banks, well, they got substantial bailouts. And afterwards, what happened with the executives and the shareholders? Well, they made lots of money, did very well, and nobody was held accountable for causing the crisis back then. We're seeing the exact same thing with the airlines now. And this happens again and again and again. The rich get taken care of, everybody else gets thrown to the wolves when we face an economic crisis. Now, I believe one of the greatest mistakes that President Obama made in his presidency was not holding the banks to account and really letting them get away with murder after they caused the financial crisis. Believe me, history shows that there were people within his administration urging him to take a more aggressive approach, but Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner didn't want to roil the system too much, and President Obama agreed with him. The result was that average people who were losing their homes and losing their jobs felt that the government had stood up for the very wealthy and not them. And guess what? They were right. Well, that's exactly what we've seen again with the airlines. And it just makes people feel that Washington is taking care of the wealthy and the elites and not everybody else. And again, they're right. This is what leads to the anger and frustration we see in so many corners in America. Average folks know that we're not doing as well as we used to, but somehow they don't know who to blame. So there are two schools of thought that have emerged as a result of this. One is the people who put the blame where I believe it does belong, which are the moneyed interests who control Washington. But then there's another group who has appealed to the racial animus of certain groups and directed the anger of these people against minority groups and immigrants, and have used this racial animus to allow them to continue to get away with stealing money from everybody else, essentially. My hope is that we'll be able to spread the message that the real cause of this problem is not immigrants or people of color or the teaching of critical race theory. The real cause of this problem are oligarchs here in the United States who are basically getting away with murder. Over the past 20 years, taxes have declined for the very wealthy while they've gone up for everybody else. And during the pandemic, while everybody was suffering economically, the rich got richer and everybody else struggled to get by. we have these moderates in Washington who claim that their goal is to not gore the ox of the rich as much as they probably do deserve it, and that somehow that's a moderate position. Really, the position of all elected officials should be to represent the people who elected them and sent them to Washington, and those people need help. Everybody else in America needs to share in the prosperity that has been created in large part as a result of the sweat of the workers. But unfortunately, that prosperity has gone overwhelmingly to the very, very wealthy, and that needs to change. Fortunately, at least in his rhetoric, President Biden seems to acknowledge that, as do many in the Democratic caucus in the Senate and the House. But a few moderates who still are standing up for the very wealthy are stopping progress on this front. I think it's time that we apply pressure on these few remaining moderates and urge them to take the position that they need to look out for the interests of the average people, not just the wealthy and the oligarchs here in the United States. It's time for that socialism for the wealthy to spread out to everybody else as well. And maybe a little bit of capitalism for the wealthy would be nice too. So on that point, I'll be interested to hear what you have to say. If you could leave some comments down below. And if you could like this video, subscribe to this channel, that'd be a huge help. I'll see you in the next video. And in the meantime, let's hope for continued progress. Thank you.